Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks. I think we'll start off. I see there's still a few people joining us, but let's get going and start off with the webinar for today. What's new in TBC aerial photogrammetry version 5.7. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate that you're taking out the time to sit with us, and we'll share a bit of what TBC aerial photogrammetry has to offer, the latest version, as well as some of the workflows that you can use inside it. Just take note that this webinar is being recorded, so if you would like to revisit it or share it with any of your colleagues, we will be posting it on our website, so you can always refer back to it if you need to see anything or want to share it with anyone in your organization. For this afternoon, the agenda will be welcome and introduction, just to introduce us and say what we're going to do. What's new in TBC 5.7, I'll run through a presentation just showing you guys what you can expect in the new version of TBC 5.7 aerial photogrammetry. I'll then hand it over to Sean and he'll show you a bit of a workflow for the DJI P1 camera, how to import and process data in TBC. Then questions and answers. If there's anything you guys would like to know or ask, we'll have the chat open and keep track of that, and we'll also answer the questions afterwards if you have any. And then we'll just run down with the social media links where you can follow us, where you can see what we are up to, and all that. Just for some housekeeping, if everybody can just keep their cameras and their mics off for now. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. We'll keep an eye out for that, and we'll also check in the chat box if there's any questions that you have. And with that, we'll start off and I'll go into the welcome and introduction. So thanks for joining us. My name is Albert Olivier. I'm the Geospatial Segment Manager for Optron, and with me today is Sean Dane. He's the UAV Segment Manager. We'll be hosting the webinar for you today. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate that you have the time to join us, and hope we will give you some insight into TBC that you will be grateful for in the future going forward. Let's head off and start off with what's new in TBC 5.7 aerial photogrammetry. Latest release was end of May that they came out. So TBC basically runs with this every 6 months. They try and bring an updated version of TBC out with new enhancements, improvements that they are doing as the requests from clients come through, and the industry out there, and this is what we can expect on this. So in the workflow enhancements in the photogram module, started off in TBC 5.6 and being enhanced further into 5.7 is the simplification of the workflow. So it is trying to produce a workflow that is a simple left to right approach, as you can see in the little bar at there, very lightly shown there, just to make it easier for you to know how to import, how to process the data, and then how to get the final deliverables in a simple left to right workflow approach that we will show you a little bit later as well. There you can see that workflow that I've been discussing. So a simple left to right workflow, simplified and guided import wizard to help you with what you need to do. Data check in the background to make sure that your data is correct, that you're bringing in, and that everything works out correctly. And then obviously more flexibility to support more drones is something else that you also see they have enhanced and will be doing in the future as well. So as you can see, simplified workflow. Step one would be to import your UAV data. Next would be to adjust the photo stations, and you can add your ground control points there as well, and then work on creating your deliverables by simply ticking the options that you would like to do, and it will then process the data for you. So fairly simple, trying to enhance that going forward, and as I said, important to note is also supporting of more drones in the future. So I'll show you a list of what currently can be done, but there's also a lot more that TBC is doing in the background to enhance that drones that they are supporting at the moment. More automation, more UAVs, as I mentioned. So you'll see in TBC 5.5 and 5.6, the DJI series was a focus point for them. So DJI Phantom 4, Phantom 4 RTK, and then the M300 P1 and L1 was the focus for them to import data from those drones. For 5.7, micro drones was the focus. As you can see, the units they have looked into there, and then going on to 5.8 and forward, they're looking at baseline processing for P1L1, so you don't have to use the RTK data you get from the RTK2 base. Wingtro 1 is one that's on the cards, as well as the Quantum Trinity F90 Plus and other drones as well. So they are definitely looking at enhancing the amount of drones that can be used to process data in TBC4. So keep an eye out on that. There will definitely be progress on that front going forward. On the ortho photo enhancements, so the true ortho deliverables, so it has increased its range of point cloud outputs and ortho photo products. Additionally, you'll see that they have also enhanced the true ortho solution and semi-global matching to make sure you get a plus minus 99% true ground coverage. As you can see in this image over here in old version 5.5, as we see in most imagery, you always get this skewed building view that you will see with a bit of a slant on the sides there. In 5.6, they improved that to make it a vertical view from the top, and then in 5.7 they enhanced it to give you sharper edges as well as true coverage of the building and the ground. So you don't have that shadow where the building you can't see the ground on the sides of the building where it seems to lean on the imagery. So that has definitely been something they've worked on and enhanced quite a lot in TBC 5.7, and they also enhanced the performance of the processing side of it to make sure it works quicker and better, and you get a better result from there, especially on the true ortho solution, and then the semi-global matching they're doing for that to give you a true ground coverage in TBC. Point cloud enhancements, this is where they have been working a bit on the filtering as well as the classification side of it. So as you can see in the filtering on point clouds, they are now able to allow you to use an alignment to actually filter the points. Specific for aerial photogrammetry would be the center alignment of a road, and let's say you just have a certain width of the road that you would like to cover and you don't need the data further from that center alignment. You can actually choose that CAD line and then filter the points up to a certain distance from that line, and it will filter out that, so you can work with the data that you need and don't have to use everything that comes from there. Obviously tunnels not so much as used for that. Improvement in the classification algorithms, so the classification and the building with aerial data they worked on. So as you can see in these two images, the previous classification didn't do such a great job when it comes to discerning between buildings and walls and those kind of things. As you can see in 5.7, you get a much better classification where you can see the blue has become just for the building side and the rest has been classified as high vegetation where it needs to be, and the ground classification is much better compared to the image on the left. Same then for aerial point clouds from aerial photos. As you can see previously, buildings was a problem in classifying when you're using LiDAR data or aerial photogrammetry data that you've generated, and they've now enhanced it that buildings can actually now be classified correctly off those kind of data sets, and you don't have to manually go and fix that problem. That has all been fixed up now and made much easier to do the correct classification in that algorithm. Then I will hand off to Sean to take over, and he will run through a bit of the workflow side using DJI P1 data. Sean, over to you.
Thanks, Albert. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and then I'll load up Trimble Business Center and take you guys through a workflow using DJI P1 data, which was captured in RTK mode. And second, yeah. All right. So the DJI L1 data was captured in RTK mode. We basically can pull in the data straight into Trimble Business Center, and as you may have seen from Albert's presentation, in the next release we'll be able to do the baseline processing inside Trimble Business Center as well, which is fantastic. So that means you could run PPK if you wanted to, and you could use Trimble Base Station. You didn't have to use the DRTK to fly your mission and do PPK processing, which is probably it saves you a bit of time, and it definitely makes your processing much more efficient when you are doing RTK or PPK and so on, as opposed to just standard image processing. All right, so I'm just going to quickly open up a new project and just take you through a couple of setups. We're going to do a metric project, and then I've got a couple of other projects lined up just to show you, because there's obviously some processing time in between, which does take a little bit. So this data set I'll show you just now took around just under an hour to process from import until generation of your author photos and point cloud and so on. So here's Trimble Business Center. For those of you familiar with it, it's been enhanced significantly over the last 5 to 6 years, and you can pretty much do just about anything in the geospatial world. The idea, or one of the ideas behind Trimble Business Center, was also to be sensor agnostic, and you've probably seen that a lot with, particularly in the drone side, bringing in data from SenseFly, bringing in data from DJI, Wingtra, Quantum Systems, and so on. And the list of supported cameras is getting greater and greater. So, and that's not only on the aerial photogrammetry side, that's also on GNSS and LiDAR, mobile mapping systems, point clouds. TBC doesn't really mind where the point cloud comes from, as long as it's a good point cloud. You can pull it in and off you go. But I think one of the most important things, and I've noticed this over the last couple of months, when I've been more involved with UAVs, is TBC's power of pulling data together. So you may have GPS data, you may have leveling data, total station, mobile mapping, for aerial photogrammetry from your drone. All that data is sitting in different coordinate systems or in different spaces and so on. Trimble Business Center is really, really good at getting that data combined into the right system, so that you're then able to extract out really good deliverables based on a combination of data, not just a point cloud from a laser scanner or a point cloud from a UAV and so on. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. In addition to that, you also have all the survey and mapping workflows you can think of within Trimble Business Center. So you've got one platform that's dealing with just about everything, and now we're also processing data from drones. Like I've said, we've got mobile mapping, laser scanners, and then the traditional GNSS and mapping and leveling and total station info. So it really is a great package, and I believe that every surveyor should be having a copy of TBC to manage and process their data. All right, so enough rambling on. Here's the just a blank project. So we'll go into Photogrammetry tab, and as Albert was talking about, we've got a nice workflow led by the buttons on the screen. So first up, we're going to set up our coordinate system. All right, I have used this coordinate system before, so it gives you a list of the ones you've used in the past. Otherwise, you can go and search. If you're not in South Africa, we've got coordinate systems from across the world, so we're pretty covered there. In this case, this data is in South Africa, WG31, and I added on the geoid as well, SA Geoid 2010. So coordinate system setup. We're then going to import some UAS data. In this case, there's 2 flights. I'll show you the import method, and then I'll open up a data set I'll open up a next project where the data has been imported. It takes around 3 to 5 minutes to import the data and make little snapshot images of all the photos that have been included. In this data set, there's 2 flights and a total of just under 1,000 images. So if you would go to import data, in that case, you can simply have your data set, and you can drag and drop your data into your project. And then it will look like the following. 1 second. Let's go to the start page, and I'll open up a new project. Cheat a little bit, but sometimes you have to. No, I'm just saving some time. So I'm not going to have done anything different that you wouldn't have done in your normal workflow. Couple of seconds just to open up the project. Maybe I can have a drink of water. maybe another one. There we go. All right. So you would be in your standard plan view. All right. There's a couple of nice little features that you have in the background. So if you've signed into your Trimble ID, you get access to background imagery from Digital Globe. So that is what you're seeing in the background now. So if I just turn it off quickly, that would be your sort of standard setup that you had with Trimble Business Center that you may be used to. You also have the ability just with once you've logged in to have one click and it'll toggle on Digital Globe imagery to give you a good idea of where you are. Pretty useful and also nice to enhance your deliverables at a later stage and so on. Very neat little feature. All right, so back to the Photogrammetry tab. This is the project that I was essentially dragging and dropping in. If we go into the 3D view and we'll move around, you can just have a look-see at the area that was flown. You can see all the photo stations. If you zoom in nicely, you can see a picture of one of our UAVs from the past, the UX5. And I have already imported some ground control points as well. But I'll take you through that process and you can see what it looks like. So we've imported our data. The next tabs over here under GNSS, if we were doing post-processing of the baselines with PPK, we would then do this here, but this data set is already done with RTK, so there's no need for it. If you don't have your data readily available, you can use internet downloads and download data from TrigNet automatically, or wherever else you are on the continent or in the world, you're able to access database GNSS base stations from wherever. Obviously, they need to be within, probably 10 or 20 kilometers from where you're operating. So in most cases, in rural South Africa, guys have got their own base station, or in this case, they use the DRTK base from DJI, and we were operated in RTK mode. All right, so now you've got your data sets all ready to roll. Just have a look here a little bit. These are the little images that I was telling you about. So it makes a little snapshot image of what was taken. That takes about 5 minutes when on import. So that's what I was talking about earlier on. All right, you'll jump into the next step, which is adjusting your photos. So if I adjust my photo stations, I'm not going to do the adjustment now, as I've already done it in the next process, because this takes probably the longest amount of time, which is in the region of 20 minutes to half an hour, a bit longer. So you'll jump into your adjustment, and just need to move Albert out the way. Sorry about that. I can't move Albert out the way. And you'll perform your adjustment, and then it'll show you the results. In this case, as I said already, we've got RTK data, so we can do the absolute and relative adjustment straight after. Once you've done that, you would then go and adjust with your GCPs. So I'm going to pull in the next project, which will then show you the process and make the assumption that the adjust photo stations has been run, and then I'll show you the GCP picking. We've got 5 GCPs we're going to pick, and then we'll look at the reports and then how to create some deliverables, and off you go. All right, so let's go to the next project. And so it'll take a few seconds again. It gives me a chance to drink some more water. All right, here we go. All right, so as I said, this section we've already processed. As you can see now, the adjust photo stations is not grayed out anymore. It's been done. We could actually go and process again if we wanted to. I'm going to click on just photo stations with the GCPs, just so you can see what the process is. So this has already been done, and so you'll see some results already. I'll go back to absolute adjustment. It'll give me the listing of all the GCPs that I've pulled in. And one thing, that was just a drag and drop as well. So if you've got Let's see, we've got some data, GCPs. You can literally just drag and drop that CSV file into TBC, and the points are there. Click on the point list, you'll see down the bottom underneath Albert again, you'll see the GCP values there at the bottom. All right, second. Okay, so it's fairly simple. You'll click on the GCP in the ID. Then you'll see that because we've operated in RTK mode, we're very, very close to the positions anyway, so they're not too far off. You basically zoom in to a point, and then you'll click on the photo station that you want to, well, the image that houses the GCP that I haven't used all of them. So you'll see, and if I click on just in the middle, you get this little nice pixel picker screen that you can pick the pixel that represents the center of the, and then we'll add it into the list of points for your process. And you'll just run around through every single one of those 5 and do your checks. We'll then run the adjustment, and then we'll have a look at the report in a few minutes. Pretty simple. One thing that was interesting in this case as well, and it's one of the reasons why I mentioned the whole coordinate system and getting your data in the right space, is the guys are struggling here with the DJI DRTK, because that base station you're only able to key in an ellipsoidal height, and they were wanting to work in orthometrics. So they had a height difference of around 20 or 30 meters depending on the geoid ellipsoid separation. That's not an issue for TBC at all. Pulling in the data and we're tying it down in the right place, and understands geoids and ellipsoids and all that. So just another good thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about choosing software to process and manage your data. All right, so GCPs are processed. Well, we've done the adjustment with the GCPs. All right, and we can quickly have a look at the report. So once you've done that adjustment, a report is created, a nice PDF report, which looks something like this. And you have a whole lot of interesting things to look at. And I'm not going to bore you with all the main things, but you can see some of the, sorry, excuse me for one. Sorry guys, just had my son deciding it would be good to thrash on the door. Anyway, apologies. But that's what happens when you work from home, I suppose. All right, I just want to go down to the bottom and have a look at the control points. Feel free, and if any of you guys want any of these reports or data to have a look at, just drop me a line and I'll send it through and you can have a look at. But if we look at the GCPs, there's of them, and let's have a look at the. Let me just make it a bit bigger, so we can see the given results, coordinate minus the adjusted, and you can see that there's very, very small differentials between these values. So pretty solid data set, well surveyed, well mapped, great sensor, the P1, all in all a really good result. So feel free to look through all these reports in time. When you buy your copy of TBC, you can look at them all day. All right, so once that's all good and you're happy that your data is in a good place, it's accurate enough and meets the right tolerances, you can then move on to the next stage, which is creating your deliverables. So specifically in this case, we've got 3 options that you can go for. You can pick terrain model or surface model. In photogrammetric terms, you're obviously only going to get a surface model on top of the, the imagery is obviously not like with LiDAR, you can penetrate through vegetation. Here you're just going to get a surface model at the top. All right, you can pick the density. So in this setup that I did in the part, which I'll show you the results just now, I did a medium density. And then you can pick the LAS file output or XYZ, generally go with LAS. You obviously pick where you want the data to be stored on your PC. And then what we can also do is create a elevation raster, which is quite handy. Theoretically, we should be able to use that back later on with DJI Terra, not with DJI Terra, with DJI Pilot, if we're flying and we want to use terrain follow, we can use the raster DSM as a background for terrain follow, which is pretty cool. When your drone is now following the terrain, so you say I want to map it 100 meters above terrain, and your drone's trajectory will change. It won't just fly in a flat inline. So this is a way of getting data that you can use, and you can do this with P4 RTK as well, and the M300. So it's a neat solution. And then of course you want to make your ortho, and you have a couple of options to pick. So your raster option, you can pick high, medium, or low density. I did medium in both these cases, and the ortho was also a medium density ortho. You can pick your format, TIFF or TIFF with compression, and you click create, and you wait around for a few minutes, probably 20 or so, and your results will be produced. So all in all, if we looked at this whole project from start to finish, from pretty much everything I've showed you now, it was around 56 minutes of processing time from import until the orthophoto was delivered, which is for almost 1,000 images, or just under 900 and something. It's a pretty good process, and it's not taking hours like things used to take in the past. A large amount of that speed is enhanced because of using PPK or RTK processing. It does definitely speed up and gives the speed of the process and gives your computer that much more of a head start. All right, so we make the assumption, or I made the assumption that has been processed and the data has been delivered, and I'll show you what it would look like. So here we have a folder where I already picked out the ortho for you. So there's an ortho, it's medium res ortho. So there's your ortho photo of the area, all right, in a TIFF format. And there was also the raster. It doesn't really make sense. It's one color because it's pretty much flat. So, but that's a raster DSM, believe it or not. And then you obviously have your point cloud as well, which is already inside this data set. If we go into the 3D view, you can zoom in a little bit here. So you can so there you can see the point cloud that we've already produced. It's colorized as well. And we can then go and either you can take that last file straight out of the folder where you stored it and pull it into some other software that you're going to use to process if you wish. However, you can inside TBC do your ground classification. You can do your building classification. You can do a countless number of other processes that I'm not going to get into right now, but things like volume calc, surface models, you can go mad. And it handles point clouds really well. And again, if you had some GPS data you wanted to pull in and put it all together and do a bit of a topo plan or whatever it is you're trying to produce, you're certainly able to do it. One of the nice little features as well is you have in here, which is survey photo point. So you're able to go into the imagery and actually if when you generated the point cloud, it didn't come out, you didn't get a point where you wanted one, you're able to go into the imagery and click a pixel, and it'll do essentially forward intersections to that point and create a coordinate for you off the imagery, which is pretty handy. Yeah, so that's pretty much it in terms of photogrammetric workflow. As you can see, it's really straightforward. It's the guys at Trimble have really done great work in making the processes simple and so on. But it still obviously makes sure that you fly properly, collect data properly, plan properly, so that you can get these results to work very nicely. Obviously, we can support you guys if you're struggling. It's not a problem. We've got a whole good team of support folks who know TBC very well, and yeah, I really implore you guys to take on TBC as your drone, or should we say geospatial data processing hub. Right, super. If there are any questions or anything, then feel free to ask. There might be, because I can't see the screen. So let's share. There we go.
No problem. We do have a few questions, Sean. So for Becky, what's the yearly subscription fee? Oh, Becky, at the moment there's two options to TBC. You've got the perpetual license where you buy your dongle at a standard fee, and then your yearly software maintenance is about 20% of the purchase price to keep your maintenance up to date. Reason for the maintenance is as soon as that maintenance expires after a year, you won't be able to download the latest version of TBC. So your TBC will still work. You'll just be stuck on the version that was released before your warranty date expired. So that is a yearly fee, and it depends on the TBC version that you have. Some guys will have TBC Advanced with aerial photogrammetry and scanning option. That all depends on what you have to determine the fee. So please make contact with your sales representative, and they can give you a good idea of what you require for that side of the things. We do have a subscription offering as well, where you then have a yearly subscription that you pay. It's a once-off, it's a yearly fee that you pay, and then you have the latest version of TBC available. You've got your Trimble ID that you just sign into the software, and you will have your subscription available to you. So that's a different option there. It's not the same as the perpetual license. You don't have a dongle. It's all soft key orientated with your email address as the main key in, and then your software is up to date, and you can sign into any PC to use your TBC. So reach out to your sales representatives. They can give you a better breakdown of exactly the cost on that. Just from Philip, Sean, any specific key things that the guys should be looking out for in the report that was generated for the GCPs?
Sorry, I was just muted there. No, good question. Put me on the spot. I was just looking at, in that case, just how well the data fitted to the ground control, right? So that's obviously one. It gives you a list of all the residuals of all the photo points and photo stations and so on. I think the best thing probably, Philip, is for me to just send you a copy of a report, and then I can take you through it and explain it in a little bit more detail, because you're obviously going to look at your tie points and how the images were all tied together, and how many they were and how they were distributed and so on to get a good evaluation of your data. So look, ground control is obviously important to make sure you're in the right place and you tie down in the right coordinate system. But you are correct, and there are some other things to look at, like tie points, how they're distributed, and then the whole bundle adjustment and block adjustment that is done as well is also important to look at. But yeah, let me send you a copy, and then we can chat about it offline if you like.
Thanks, Sean. Philip, just on your second question about loan license. No, we don't have a loan license, but we do have a demo license. You can just pop me an email if you want to, or you can just request it from your sales representative. We do have a 30-day demo license that we can supply, and that will give you the full functionality of TBC with the scanning, with the photogrammetry module, everything included for 30 days. So it is possible. Just request it from your sales representative, and they will get in touch with me, and I can supply you with that license if you need it. Drone data processing from Fred always takes a lot of time with computer specs. I see they do mention DJI Terra here, Sean, for the L1, and that's obviously a specific improvement there speed-wise from DJI. The situation with TBC is, look, it always depends on, if you're just using straight up LiDAR data, you'll find that it is much quicker. The reason why the processing of photogram data takes so long is you've got to remember each pixel has to be matched with the next one in a photograph with the overlap, and that's 5 photographs that needs to be matched to each other, and that has to be worked across all the imagery that you have. So that is where the time is spent to get that done. Yes, there has been a lot of improvements. You'll see TBC is also now working on using the GPU on your PC to do that processing to speed it up. So it's not your CPU that gets used, but your GPU from your graphics card that gets used to speed up the process. So there's always been enhancements, as Sean mentioned, stuff that took 2 hours is now taking an hour. But yeah, PC spec does play a part in it, and it's unfortunately very difficult to say if you have this specific PC with this specific photographs, you can get a ballpark idea of the time. But every PC is different in the spec, and the amount of images you use will obviously make the time much bigger. Anything to add on to that, Sean? I think that covers about it for the processing speed of data.
Yeah, I think you got that there. Of course, the number of images that you're processing as well, whether you use PPK, RTK, scenario, or just standard imagery, those all affect the processing time, because you essentially giving, if you use PPK or RTK, giving your PC a head start. There's less work, in inverted commas, that it has to do. Yes, as Albert said, GPU, very important these days. I know TBC's certainly swung onto that. The PC that I have here, which processed in just under an hour the data that you've seen, it's an i7. It's got 32 gigs of RAM and a GeForce RTX with 8 gigs of GPU RAM, and it's fairly entry level in terms of processing power, and honestly, it does a good job.
Thanks there, Sean. Then for Anton, just asking about the advantages of terrain following. So Anton, obviously the advantage of terrain following is the drone stays the same height from the ground. So you will find that you got a much better GCP accuracy that you get, and a much better ground sample distance is much more consistent when you follow the terrain. Obviously with previous, in the beginning with drones, that was basically just from the height that you took off, or specific height, you just had a standard height that your drone will follow. And if the terrain drops down, your GSD would become much bigger and much smaller depending on the distance the drone is from the ground. So the advantage is definitely that you will get a much better consistency on your GSD and accuracy that you have across your whole flight compared to where a drone just stays on a specific height and the terrain does whatever it feels like. So that will definitely be an advantage there. Anything to add on to that, Sean? I think that covers what you will find with terrain following.
Yeah, pretty much got that.
Okay. Minimum spec on a PC, yes, the TBC datasheet does actually have a minimum requirement that you will find in there. So if you want to know more about that, just have a look on the TBC website, on our website as well. You'll find the datasheet there. It does specify, it depends on what version of TBC you're looking at, as well as the modules that you would like to add. Trimble does give you a decent minimum spec and a recommended spec for the PC that will work with the specific modules you're looking at. So you can find it in there. US Master, no, US Master doesn't fall away. US Master is linked to TBC. So what happens is in the photogram module, it runs US Master in the background for the processing. So you still have the option, I think Sean did pop up in the menu tab there, you'll still have an option to export to US Master. So if you would like to run it in there, you can still use US Master, and the updates on US Master is linked to your actual TBC license as well. That's correct, Sean. I don't think there's any discrepancy between the two. You can go either or. TBC just has the much quicker workflow, I think, at the moment than what US Master has, and you have much more functionality in US Master where you can tweak the camera specs and stuff like that. So it allows you a bit more advanced functionality of feature changes and stuff, I think, that TBC does.
Yeah, pretty much. So so it doesn't disappear, Nikki, it's still there. You even have access to it in the subscription module as well. So if you're subscribing to TBC, you get access to US Master as well. No problem. And then you have the choice. So US Master would be, I'd say it's more for the purist photogrammetrist, where you want to be able to access, more parameters and so on. TBC is looking at, let's give you a workflow with trusted sensors. So we've gone and done the work. We know that Sony RX2 or RX1 R2 sensor is a great sensor, or a P1, and we then give you a nice workflow in TBC to make your life easier. So that's really the difference. The processing and the result that you'll get at the end are exactly the same.
Right.
And you can interchange the data as well if you wish. That's the The other thing, which is perhaps handy and not necessarily with, like, if you're flying a drone but you're not doing classic mapping and you're doing a vertical building or a tower or something, you can process that data in US Master that you can't process it in TBC. So you could start the project and then you could pull your data into TBC. So now you've got a vertical point cloud, for argument's sake, or a vertical surface that you've captured with a drone, and you can process and reconstruct that in US Master, pull the data into TBC. So,
Good, thanks, Sean. There's a question from Franco on the PPK processing for the P1 and how does it compare to GCP. I don't think TBC can't process PPK data yet for P1. It is coming out in the next release. But we will have a look at it, Franco. I think what Sean has shown there is if you use the DRTK2 base, you get a very good accuracy, and I don't foresee that PPK would have a much greater effect on the accuracy that you find your flight being on compared to the RTK option. Your take on that, Sean?
You'll get a very similar result. So PPK or RTK, PPK being post-processing kinematics, so you don't have a direct connection to your drone at the time, whereas RTK you do. Essentially, the results of between those two are fundamentally the same. So the data that you looked at today could have been classified as being PPK processed, and then it was RTK, but at the end of the day, the results would be very, very similar. In fact, you probably wouldn't see much of a difference.
Yeah, I think, Franco, on that one, I think it depends on if you have a RTK, DRTK available, and if you don't have, then the PPK option obviously becomes the one you can use if you have a normal base station or if you have a TrickNet station close enough that you can actually download the data to process your PPK data afterwards. So I think it's either or, depending on what you have and what you have available to you at that moment when you do the flight.
So Franco, just something else for you, and I know you're using the software today, and that might be the reason why you're asking the question. So the true Evo software that we supply with our LiDAR systems from GeoQ can process the PPK P1 data inside it. If you compared the results from an RTK survey and the PPK processed, the results will be very, very, very much the same. I'll put something on a block and we can chat later.
Then I've just got a question about TBC dongle license that doesn't support all the features. We just need to get your license manager screenshot. We can have a look at that. It all depends on what license of TBC you have and what modules you have active on it or activated on it. So best would be go into the support tab. You'll see there's a license manager button that you can press, and that will show us what the license is and the key ID. If you send that off to your sales representative, we can get the information and see what is available on that TBC license, and then we can have a look and see if you need any more features or functionality in there. We can always look and see if we can upgrade that dongle for you according to what your requirements are. Can you help us with an upgrade on TBC version? Believe is 2020. We need the latest version. Yes, we can definitely help with that. As I said, send us the license manager information. We will then look at there's different ways to reinstate your software maintenance depending on how long it's been expired, but that's definitely possible to do. So please just send us that information through your sales representative, and we have a person specifically looking after warranties. She will then be able to pull out the information that is required and give you a quotation to update your version that you have or what you need to get to the latest version of TBC. So that won't be a problem. That seems to be all the questions. Anybody else, if you want to, you can just unmute yourself, ask a question. I think we've gone to the end of what we need to do this side. I just forgot almost there's one last thing I need to do before we finish off. Yes, I had a question there. Go for it. No questions. You can still type it if you want to. All good. We will be around for a little bit still after this. I just want to quickly run through the social media side of things. So guys, if you want to keep track of us, see what latest products is available, technology, interesting news.
Yes, Albert.
Yes.
Sorry, I came in a little bit late. When is that version 5.8 coming? Because I'm intending to buy an F90 Plus.
Yes. John, it will probably be in about 5 months to 6 months time. So TBC releases a new update around every 6 months. Currently, the cycle that we've seen from them. I know we have been in contact with Trimble and are getting them to look into the F90 Plus to import that data into TBC and be able to process it. So that is something that we have brought up with them. They are looking into that for us. The next release, as I said, will probably be in about October, November, but there's no definite date at the moment, but that's a rough estimate. Should probably be around November this year for the new 5.8 to be released. But we'll keep track of that and see what they can do with the F90 Plus from Quantum Systems, if they will be able to process it. But it is definitely on their radar, and we are keeping tabs on it with them for them to be able to do that for us going forward in TBC.
Okay. Now, will that go for the wing try as well?
Yes, Wingtra is also one that they're looking at. So it looks like at the moment Wingtra is on their radar, the Quantum is on their radar, and any other drone configurations that clients will bring to them and under their intention for them to work on. So at the moment we definitely know that Trinity is one they're looking at, and the Wingtra is another one they're looking at. As I said, nothing is definite yet. It is something that they have that we have requested, and they said they will look into. So obviously, closer to the release, we will be able to give you more information regarding how far they have come along with that.
Okay. No, thank you.
Okay. For the recording, yes, guys, it's just the last question. We will be posting the recording on our website. It's probably by tomorrow or Monday. You should be able to find it there if you need to look into it. It will be there. Sean, I see Nikki is asking a question there for you, if you can see it right at the bottom. It was at the bottom.
I'll just read it quick. So, I think, so, Nikki, it really depends on the sensor that you're using. So, if I'm not mistaken, you're flying a SenseFly today, an EB, and I think, so you're going to get the same kind of results. And what I mean by you have the ability to adjust parameters, and so where you more of like a purist photogrammetrist would look at UAS master, and you have more control in a way. But your results are going to be, so if you took a SenseFly, an EB, or with a SOTA 3D or SOTA camera, and you ran it through US Master and you ran it through TBC, the results are going to be the same. You just have the ability to change a few things if you need to. But in most cases, you don't. The sensors are standard, they're calibrated, and everything is good to go. So I wouldn't complicate things and then try and use US Master because you think you're going to get a better result. You're going to get the same result in TBC. Your workflow is simplified. And that's with tried and tested cameras. If you now want to bring in some random camera that say Trimble haven't ratified, then US Master, you can start to bring cameras that are, I wouldn't say off the street, but like are not, pre-checked by Trimble and so on. And then you can start to do your own reconstructions in US Master. So I would stick to running a workflow with Trimble Business Center. Today, if you've got those standard drones that we're DJI P1, SenseFly EBs, the Quantums soon to come, micro drones, Wingtra.
All right. Good. Thanks, Sean. Paul, I see again the recording, so yes, it will be on our website. Please just keep an eye on. I think you'll get an email also saying when it has been loaded up, and you will be able to access it there. And then Franco, Sean, I don't think you can connect a normal RTK base onto M300. It is unfortunately only the DRTK2 can be set up as a RTK base for the M300. Am I correct in that statement?
You are correct. So Franco, I mean, what you could do is use the base stations that are running at the mine already, get the Rhinex data from those, and then you do the PPK processing in TrueView Evo. That you could do today. You have access to that. In future, when we can do P1 PPK, and you could do the same thing. In my mind, there's no advantage to fly in RTK mode. it doesn't make any difference. It's sometimes a little bit more hacky because you have to have the base right next to you with a controller and stuff, whereas you could be flying at the one end of the mine, your base is at the other end, and you'll be able to process the data and so on. So, but to answer the question, you're not able to run a non-DJI base in RTK mode. In fact, it's partially a incorrect statement because you can use a network RTK. So if you can dial in your controller, you can dial it into, well, you're basically dialing your drone into a network base station, like say TrigNet or something like that. You could do that, but not with a base station that's standing next to your controller. Make sense? Hopefully.
Good. Thanks.
Albert, or Sean, can I come in there quickly?
Yeah.
I'm currently running the version 5.32, and we are not on annual subscription as such. So will that cost me more to upgrade to 5.7 or 5.8?
No, John, I can answer that. So if you are that far back, that's probably more than 2 years ago that was released. The cost of upgrading it now back into software maintenance would be exactly the same if you do it now. If you do it in 6 months, if you do it in a year from now, that cost would stay exactly the same. So basically how Trimble works on the perpetual license side when your software maintenance is you basically get a software maintenance update before your expiry date, which is the lowest cost that you will have. Once it expires and it's past its expiry date, from the expiry date up to a year from that date, you get another reinstatement, which will be a little bit more expensive than the general stock item that you will pay. And then if it's more than a year since the expiry date has gone past, then you will pay the maximum amount to reinstate. But that amount stays exactly the same. So if it's a year and a half, 2 years, or 3 years down the line, that cost will be exactly the same. There's no increment in the years gone by for the price that you pay to get your software maintenance back up to date. That makes sense, John?
Yeah, no, thanks, Albert.
Okay, all good. Good. I think that's done with all the questions. Just quickly on the social media side, guys, if you want to keep track of us and what we're doing, what's happening in the industry, we are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, the YouTube channel as well, and the actual website as well. So keep an eye on that if you want to keep posted on what we are doing, what the latest products are available, and up-and-coming webinars. Please visit us there and follow us on those platforms. That's it then from my side. Sean, thanks for you as well for your live demonstration there. Guys, we'll stick around for another 5 minutes or so, Sean, and then if there's any questions, you guys can still post it there. Thanks for the time and thanks for joining us.